My name is Isaac Joel. I am the writer, director, editor, and I do portray the protagonist, Adrian Locke, in Remnant Falls.
What inspired you to tell the story of Adrian Locke and the city of Remnant? Was this concept something that you had been working on for a long time?
Remnant Falls was the first ambitious story that came to my mind right after I graduated high school, right after I turned 18. What you learn when you go into film school is kind of just write what you know, write what you feel. And so for me at that time, that was a very young adolescent time for me. And I had no idea that what I was writing was kind of life imitating art, vice versa. A little bit to me, I thought I was just writing an epic story that was going to be entertaining, and never did I realize how emotionally connected I was to Adrian Locke, to Remnant. The idea of Remnant being this corrupted city that is sealed off from the world in the distant future is something that I feel that can be realistic and grounded in this world today. And so I kind of took a lot of inspiration on what is happening with immigrants, what is happening with the wall and borders being built up and keeping people out. I wanted to take that story, me, myself being a Hispanic, but I'm not an immigrant myself, but that is something that my family grew up with, that I have friends that grew up with that struggle. And I felt compelled to tell that story of my people. Even though it's not a personal struggle that I know, it is something that I can relate to as being an outcast from society. And I think that's why I wanted to tell Adrian Locke's story, was because he is an outcast. And I think everybody can relate to feeling as an outsider from time to time.
Of course, of course. And the city of Remnant itself feels like a character when you're watching the film. When you were creating this dangerous dystopian world, how did you manage to do that?
You know, I pulled a lot of inspiration from films that I was raised watching, TV shows that I watched with my father. One of the TV shows that I grew up watching with my father was Knight Rider. And it was really famous for the time, and it was this cop working this case, and he had this car that was able to talk, and there was like an AI feature to it, and they were kind of partners in crime together. And so I always felt like those were nostalgic stories that never got to be told on the big screen, that kind of got forgotten over time. And so I pulled in things that I felt that, oh, my father would love to see that on the big screen. My father would love to see this interpreted into that real world kind of point of view.
When you came to writing Adrian Locke, he's described as a broken man. Can you tell us more about his character and what makes his journey so compelling from the start of the film, seeing him rise to where he ends up going? Can you break that down for us?
I wanted his story to begin when the sun came up until the sun went down. And what's interesting about Remnant Falls is that the whole film takes place in one day, in one incredible, awful night. From the moment that he does rise up from the ground, as you were saying, to the moment that he walks all the way across the bridge, across the canals, miles and miles, to get to this forbidden city of Remnant that he's been kind of kicked out of, that he's been abandoned from. He grew up there as a child, but because of situations that happened, and his father was part of the police precinct, they wanted to cover up a mystery, and so they kicked him out after his father's death, which was kind of undescribed, and kind of a mystery was placed in there. And so Adrian Locke was immediately placed in foster care, orphanages, and he aged out of the system. And he was very intelligent, very smart and capable, but he was alone. He had no mother, he had no father, he had no siblings, he had nobody and nothing around him. And so I really felt for that. I really connected to that to a certain degree. What makes Adrian's story so compelling is that he's looking for answers. At the end of the day, he just wants to know the truth. The truth is something that has been kept from him his entire life, and he feels that he is owed answers, that somebody owes him an explanation. Why is his father dead? Why did they kick him out of Remnant? Why won't they allow him back in? What is the secret, and why are the police and the society and the mayor and everybody there, why is everybody so corrupted? And so I think for him, it's not so much of a journey on bringing the system down and sticking it to the man. He's not really on, a big journey like that. To him, he's kind of being a little bit selfish. He's just wanting answers for his own particular problem. But through that journey, he discovers that the fate of the world is at hand. And what does he do? Does he put away his own selfish reasons for being on this mission, or does he pursue what is at stake here? Does he kind of go above and beyond himself and kind of think outside of himself to put his needs to the side and the needs of the city that is so corrupted, the city that doesn't deserve to be saved, the people that don't deserve the hero? That's the story of Adrian. He becomes the hero that he refused to be.
So let's go into the cinematic approach in this. The start of the film, you get thrown into it right away with two characters, and they have this beautiful dialogue that goes on for a couple of minutes. And we cannot, from there, it's black and white film of two characters, sets up everything else, and it stays black and white until later on, we come to color. As a director and a creative approach, what does that symbolize? What did that mean to you? Why incorporate that in this film?
Well, first off, the opening scene, in my opinion, is one of the best opening scenes ever in films. In my films, I'm being a little bit biased about that, and I say that because the two actors, Sean and Angel, who we got to portray those characters in that scene, that was the first day. The first scene in the film is literally the first scene that we shot. We shot the whole movie in order. That's kind of like how I like to approach all my films as a director. That way you understand where you're going as a journey. And so those two characters perfectly set the tone for what the rest of the film was going to be. As a director, I was standing behind the camera watching them and hearing the language that they were using and just the tone that was being set up. That for me was enough for me to kind of go with the rest of the movie and figure out where it was and how mature I wanted it to be. The visual style of the film was the most important thing to me, next to the story. For me, you can really tell the most compelling story through visuals. And so I wanted to combine really grounded, dramatic, compelling stories with visceral visuals. And as you go through the movie, in my opinion, the visuals just keep getting better and better. The reason why we chose to start the film in black and white and transition into color, that was the first thought that I had from the beginning. I knew in my heart that was the movie and that was going to confuse people. But if you can find a way narratively for that to make sense, being that the outside of Remnant, what's outside the walls, kind of represents this kind of grim, kind of dry escape land where there's nothing and nobody, and it's kind of overrun by gangsters and kind of like the mob a little bit. And so I wanted to use that as an inspiration for the black and white, but make it his journey as he's walking through and going to Remnant. That's when the color appears. That's when maybe his eyes start to open. And man, when you get into Remnant, it is such a vibrant city. And I mean that in the best way possible. To me, I'm a big fan of colors. I feel like colors are what's missing in today's filmmaking. A lot of movies that I watch today are very flat, very colorless and kind of voidless, which is cool to a certain degree. But when you raise those colors, those blues, those yellows, they really pop on screen. And with a story like this, I think that is so important as you go through everything, because it just gets bigger and bigger.
Isaac, you wrote, directed, acted, main character and edited this film. You had a lot of hats.
Yeah,
What was it like balancing all of that?
extremely difficult. Uh, the reason why I did it was because it was very hard to find someone to portray, I think, Adrian Locke and that vulnerability. You know, I didn't want to find a well-trained actor that can come in and give a really strong, compelling performance, and he's very chiseled and he's got a six-pack and he looks really great on camera. Like, that wasn't really what the story was needing. It needed someone that the audience, I felt, could connect to. And so it got to a point where I was looking at many actors for Adrian, and I talked to people about it. When I was writing it, I wanted it to be somebody else. I love directing. Anybody that knows me knows that I started my career in directing. But as I started to make other short films with other actors, I started to learn from them, and I kind of got the itch for it. And I knew that I had a wide range of versatility when it comes to my performance. I know that I could give a good performance, that I could go to a really dark place, that I could get very emotional. And I didn't think that a lot of people knew that about me. And so this felt like a challenge. And when it comes to working with actors on my sets, I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything that I'm not willing to do. So if I'm not willing to get in a hole and be buried alive for a couple minutes and then struggle my way up, if I'm not willing to jump over a ledge, if I'm not willing to race cars down downtown Phoenix, like if I'm not willing to, you know, kind of get nitty gritty and get dangerous with it, then how can I expect to ask my actors on any project ever to do anything? So for me, this was showing my appreciation of all the hard work that they do, and that I wanted to put that into this. Besides me though, besides Adrian Locke, it is a compelling ensemble. It is such a huge cast. You don't have Adrian Locke unless you have all the other side characters. There's so many people that he comes and interacts with for a short period of time. They don't stay very long. Every character does have a short period on screen, but in my opinion, what they do is so monumental. It is so important. It drives the story. It drives him. It pushes him further. And you start to realize by the end of it who he's fighting for. The people of Remnant, the people, again, that don't deserve to be saved, or the people that also do deserve to be saved.
When you were writing this story, on paper, we know that there's 3 different films that are made. There's what's on paper, there's what's shot, and then there's what's edited and published, right?
Right.
How much did the vision change from the written script to the final product?
Not much changed. Not much changed at all. And that's something I'm very proud of. I don't think a lot of filmmakers have that, where they can walk away from a project saying, I did everything that I wanted to do. Of course, we're small-time filmmakers here in Phoenix, Arizona. You know, I don't have a big budget. I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have a massive crew. So I know what it is that I'm limited with. I know what it is that I'm capable of. And yet I still raise the bar, and I still get very ambitious with my scripts. And I always tell myself, you know what? Where there's a will, there's a way. If this is the story I need to tell, I'm gonna figure it out. And I remember one of the first questions I got asked after writing the script, and I sent it to my people, my crew. They all asked me, how are we gonna get the car? How are we gonna get a talking car? What's that gonna look like? How are you gonna be driving it around? Like how are you gonna be chased? Like, how are you gonna do all that stuff? How are you gonna be buried alive? Like, all these questions became raised, and my answer was, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna throw myself in there. I'm just gonna do it. And everybody was game for that. Everybody was like, all right, let's go. And I think that was very inviting, that having that energy on set where everybody was like giving their 100%, and everybody gave 1,000% in all of their performances when it came to action choreography, drama, or even exposition. Every film has that moment where they have to lay out the plot, what's happening. And, you know, that's always kind of the boring part of the movie, and it kind of drags everything out. But we look at those moments and we ask ourselves, how can we make this interesting? How can we draw the audience back into it and have them really invested in all of these characters and what is going on?
I love that. Now, with this, I have to say, before we turned on the cameras, you were saying that the production time took 6 months.
Right.
And you were saying that you guys shot at least 1 or 2 scenes a week, what you guys could do when you guys could. Now, a big challenge with that when you're starting out is having a strong team that can stay dedicated
Right.
for that amount of time. How did you as a leader keep everybody together on the goal to make sure that everything gets done and accomplished with your vision?
It was tough. There were definitely a few people that like raised their eyebrow, that had their doubts about the entire production, about my intentions for it. This being just a passion project, you know. I think they call it a vanity project, you know, when you kind of just make it all about yourself. But for me, it was never about that. It was always about, again, the ensemble cast, the ensemble crew. It was about putting together a group of remarkable people and seeing what it is that they're capable of. Every person on this, and this being my first feature film ever, every person on this film I have worked with at one point or another on another project. And it was literally like bringing together the Avengers, the Justice League. It was like, okay, listen guys, I think I have the most ambitious script ever, and I think all of you can be a part of it in one way or another. And everybody was down about it. Keeping them together for 6 months, that was hard. We had a lot of cinematographers whoever wasn't available, the other person would come in, take place. I even shot a couple of scenes that I'm not in myself. So we always found a way to record it. You know, there might have been a night where both of our DPs canceled and they can't come because an accident happened. And okay, well, we're gonna get these 2 random people to shoot the scene, and we're gonna teach them right here on spot on how to do it. And I think having that being kind of like a student film environment where everyone is kind of like learning something new, you know, there was always challenges. It was never a perfect set. We always had a challenge come up, but whenever that challenge came up, we immediately took to action to figure out, okay, how do we adjust that? How can we still find a way to make the story work?
You've mentioned a lot about having such a strong cast and how much it supported you through this film and how it also played a factor into Adrian Locke's character. When you were creating the script, how important was this ensemble cast? And did you already have people in mind on who would play certain parts?
I did. I wrote specific parts for specific actors because I knew what it was they were capable of, and it hadn't been shown yet on screen, and I wanted to show that off. There was a lot of people in this film that were just so talented, and they're out there right now doing incredible, bigger things outside of this. And so I'm just so proud to have had an opportunity to learn from them. You know, I think maybe they felt that they were coming on my set doing what it was that I wanted, but for me, it was my school. I was putting together the best teachers to come and show me how it was that we can, again, tell the best story possible. And we knew that this wasn't going to be a 30-minute short. We knew this wasn't going to be just an hour long. We were aiming to tell a close to 2-hour-long story possible. And we did that. We achieved that. Everything we wrote on script came to fruition in production. And then when it came to editing, there were a few scenes that we decided that we wanted to maybe, you know, get rid of or delete, of course, you know, but overall, everything that's there, we wanted and we had it.
And talk to me about post-production.
Yeah.
Editing this, right? By this time, are you sick of the film? Are you motivated? Are you burnt out? Do you just want to finish it? What's going through your mind as someone who's spent years getting to this point?
All of that. It's a complicated relationship making a movie. It's creating any type of artistic product that you care very deeply about, and that you don't just want to put it out on YouTube. You don't just want to put it out on Instagram for people to watch. You want people to actually experience it the way that you feel for it. And so with Remnant, we wanted to try and engage what the audience was feeling about it. Is this something that we all were kind of just looking at ourselves like, we think it's cool, but will other people think that this is cool? And so we put it to the test. We rented out a theater at Harkins, actually right here right across the street from this studio at 10P. Yeah, we did do that because I'm always here, and this Harkins is my place, it's my home. And so I felt right that being where we do my first debut as a director, as my feature film, as an actor. It was a first of many, many, really. And I was so nervous. I didn't know how people were going to respond to it, if people were just going to be nice and just say, oh, you did good, you know, because they're my friends, because they're my family, because they have to say that. But there was a lot of people there that I didn't know. A lot of strangers that saw the promotion, a lot of people that were friends, family from cast and crew, stuff like that. And they all came because they were adjacent, related, and they had no idea what they were in for. No idea. They just knew that, oh, my brother has been helping with this project for a while, wonder what it is. And you get in that room and you're so nervous, and just the response was truly incredible. The people cheered, they gasped, they were scared, they were really like engaged with it. And when it was all over, they all stood up and they all clapped, and it went on for a while. And it was kind of like one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, it actually worked. It actually, all of that suffering that I went through in post-production, to go back to your question, everything that I put myself through mentally, you know, there was days where I wanted to give up. There were absolutely days where I wanted to quit, where I was like halfway through, I was like, you know what? I don't want to make this anymore. I don't want to go through this anymore. The pain, people not understanding my intentions are coming from a good place, and I'm always having to explain myself. And even it becoming difficult with the post-production, putting all the scenes together, chopping it up, scoring it, sounding it, yeah, all of that, making sure it was as perfect as it could possibly be. In that moment with everybody in that theater, I knew it was worth it. I knew anything that I do afterwards would be worth it, because I'm not thinking about myself. I am 100% thinking about the audience. I am thinking about the experience I'm putting them through when they're in that seats. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste their energy. I want them to be invested in something that is kind of outside of ourselves. And I think the story of Remnant and Adrian Locke was something that people were able to relate to and to kind of grab onto. We took a lot of inspirations from things that people know, whether that be James Bond, John Wick, Mission Impossible. We were talking about Knight Rider, you know, all of these famous, iconic protagonist stories where the hero is kind of capable of withstanding anything and everyone. But for this, we wanted to dial that back. We wanted to have the character that was so highly motivated, much like those other characters, but they're still human at the end of the day. They're still just a young man at the end of the day. He's vulnerable. You can stop him. He does get tired. He can die. And that's the journey that he goes on. That's the journey that we all went on. And making Remnant Falls was so worth it, man. It really was.
I want to ask, through all of that, even the film having its challenges, what moment for you during production was there trouble, where you were, oh, I don't know if this could actually be pulled off, but it still happened?
I think the biggest challenge for me was figuring out the car, Ethanol. To me, he was an important character. He wasn't just a prop. He wasn't just something that I wanted people to kind of disregard in the film. I took a lot of examples from iconic cars, you know, things that were a little sentimental to me. You know, of course, you have Bumblebee from Transformers, you know, the first car that you kind of connect to, that can talk, that can do things, that can operate. I always kept stuff like that in mind, and I knew that I wanted to kind of recapture that magic of having your first car. You know, Adrian Locke is an outcast from society. In my mind, he was always kind of homeless right when he got kicked out of the orphanage. So he's been living on the streets. You know, he's not a trained assassin. He's not a martial arts fighter or boxer. He doesn't know anything like that. He's just a man that's on a mission. And so he's never had any possessions, any materialistic things like that. When he finds ethanol, which is also connected to his father, which happens to be the car that he owned, there becomes this kind of symbolic connection where he feels a connection to the car from his dad and a little bit of away from the past. And so to me, finding the right car to kind of symbolize a little bit of the past and the future a little bit. And so we picked, I believe, a 1969 red Corvette to portray ethanol. And my friend, who was also part of the film, he owned the car at the time, and it was not an easy car to drive. And that was very challenging because it was literally not, you would think it would be easy and, you know, a sports car, like, nah, man, those things are ancient. They're dinosaurs. They're hard to turn. And I don't know how to drive stick. So it was all new for me jumping into it. And it was really fun because we had specifically a camera crew that had experience recording commercial cars. And I specifically reached out to them because they captured beautiful images of cars with their videos, and they just make commercials. And so I asked them, hey, have you guys ever made a film before? And they're like, no, we've never shot a film before, never done anything like that. I'm begging you, I will give you anything you want if you just come for one night and record us driving this Corvette all around the city, and we'll use clips to intertwine within the movie wherever it fits, basically. And you just give us as many shots as you can of this car driving around. And they're all about it. And so we met up in downtown, we drove it everywhere. And to me, that was the challenge. But when we were there and when we were doing it, I had a walkie-talkie while driving and talking to them. They were telling me what to do, how to turn. It suddenly became more than just a film. It became something that we were like, oh, we're capturing real magic here. This is something that people are gonna really like. Car enthusiasts would really, really enjoy these sequences with the soundtrack. And, you know, we wanted it to kind of be something that people would watch and be like, wow, that's exciting. That's a world that I could live in.
I love that. Talking with the car, did you have other options, or did you, as soon as you saw the red Corvette, you were like, that's the one?
I think when I saw the Corvette, I knew. I think deep down my heart, I always wanted to drive a Corvette. But I love the shape of it. It truly became about the shape of it, the structure and all the curves. And it's just, no other car is designed like that. And I felt like it reminded me a lot of like the Batmobile, you know, something that had like a long tail in the back. You know, you use your imagination a little bit. You know, I'm a child at heart. And so I see stuff like that, and I think of my favorite movies growing up. So I wanted to, again, recapture that magic for those people. I will say another challenge in the film was we wanted it to feel big. Not only did we shoot at least 95% of the film right here in Arizona, which I'm very proud of that, but I also wanted to look a little bit outside of that. I think with all my short films, we're always looking at other locations, and I've traveled to the sand dunes, I've traveled up north in the woods, in the snow, I traveled to California. I know that doesn't seem very far, but going that far lengths versus your backyard to make a movie, to me, was exciting. And so with Remnant, there was a particular sequence between me and Eden's character, played by Kaylee, and she was just great to work with in this movie. And I wanted mine and her character to be running through chaotic streets with lights and just flashing on them, and they had no idea where they are, where they're going, and just that alone was an exciting transition to me. And I was convinced that we had to shoot it in Vegas, that we had to go out there for one night only to shoot this. And I asked her, I was like, listen, this is, if you don't want to do it, we don't have to. I'll figure it out. I'll rewrite the scene. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But if we can find a way to go out there for one night and shoot us running around, that would be incredible. She was, again, more than happy to go that extra length to make it exciting for the viewer. And in my opinion, again, that's one of the most exciting sequences when they're running, because you have no idea when it becomes Arizona and when it becomes Vegas and when it comes back to Arizona. And so we feel like we perfectly kind of intertwined that big world.
So the film unfolds over the course of one night. Yes, right? Took you 6 months and multiple states to shoot the film, which is even a bigger accomplishment. I didn't know that, so yeah, congratulations to that. It's really cool. When you shoot this film over one night, what does this compressed timeline signify?
So not only did it take us 6 months to shoot the actual film, but it took me 6 months to get into actual physical shape to be Adrian Locke. At the time, I'm a very slender man. I am very, very skinny. And so I didn't want Adrian Locke to portray that. I knew that he was someone that lived off on the streets. He was probably eating off the garbage. You know, I wanted to grow out the biggest beard that I could, grow out my hair as long as I could. I really wanted to capture what it felt like to be homeless and to be in the streets like that. And so I think first it started off with that, and then transitioning to cutting it. I wanted to signify this transition of the character, that he was going from the black and white to the color. And so there's a scene where they shave off his beard. All that is real. They shave off his hair. All that, we actually hired a real barber to film that scene with us so that he didn't mess up, so that the character looked consistent. And so for 6 months after that, I had to look the same. I had to be consistent with the mustache, with the hair, and make sure all of that was in unison to symbolize that it took place in one day. And to me, that was so important, because the best stories are taking place in such a short period of time, not over the course of weeks and months and years and flashbacks and back and forth. And I wanted, for my first feature film, to create the most linear story as possible and not rely on flashbacks, not rely on jumping back and forth to the past and the future. I wanted to tell something that took place in real time, that unfolded right in front of your eyes. And so I thought that was really exciting.
With the film itself, do you see Remnant Falls as a cautionary tale about what happens when societies crumble, or is it more about the optimistic, about potential and their personal redemption?
Being the most corrupted city in the world, that is why it is closed off. That is why it is literally domed off from the entire outside world. The government has kind of just forgotten about it. They haven't laid any aid to them. They're not giving them any resources. It's kind of, you know, a doggy world down there. You know, everyone has to kind of just fend for themselves. And that's what happens when society collapses, when there is no government, when there is nobody left to kind of look out for, you know, the little guy. And so that to me was always Remnant, and Adrian coming in and exposing all of that, exposing the secrets, the hypocrisy that was going on, and not necessarily, again, being the hero that he thought he was going to be, but unveiling this enormous lie that Remnant has been keeping for such a long time, which is covering up the death of his father in a secret mission that involved time corruption. And so that's kind of where the film gets, I think, even more exciting, is that not only is it a neo-Western and very grounded, and when we start off the film that way, and sure, it starts that way, but as you progress, as you get to the final act, it becomes this epic sci-fi adventure. And to me, I wanted to show that I can combine both storytellings, show that not only is it raw and gritty and very dramatic, but it can also be very epic at the same time, something that's like, you know, a blockbuster that you watch in the theaters. We tried very hard to get Remnant on Amazon Prime. I have currently 2 short films on there, Shadow Valley and Augment, and those were my first projects that I put out, and those again kind of captured the level of ambitious that I go with my films. That kind of laid the groundwork for Remnant. And so we were really excited about the prospect of putting our first feature film on Amazon Prime. And we actually submitted it twice, and for whatever reason, I honestly can't even explain, we got denied. And so we went back to the drawing board, like, oh my God, what do we do? Our plan essentially failed. We wanted to put it out one way. We can't do that anymore. We don't want to put it on a website. We don't want people to watch it on their phones. We don't want people to watch it on YouTube. We wanted to try and capture the same experience we gave audiences in the theaters. And so the only way that we could possibly figure out how to do that was physical release. Something, a lost art that I forgot about, you know, for a long period of time. I think I used to collect DVDs for such a long time. And for whatever reason, I kind of just stopped. It kind of became pointless, I think, because of streaming and platforms like that. And everything was accessible online for free or not. And you could pay cents to watch anything on the go, anywhere. And so it felt like it was just pointless to be buying DVDs. And then all of a sudden one day, I went to the store and I started buying movies again. I started buying 4K copies. I started buying steelbooks, and I became obsessed with the artwork all over again. It was like a love that I forgot about. And that inspired me on, oh my God, I have to give this to people. They have to know what I feel when I open up a DVD from the shelf. They have to experience that. And so we developed the technology. We have the equipment to do it ourselves. You know, we're doing it from home. We've designed the discs. We've designed the main menus. We designed the covers for the Blu-ray and the 4K. We are releasing the movie in both formats, and that is really exciting. Not only is it coming out on DVD, but it's on 4K for those cinephiles that really appreciate that level of format. But for those that don't have, say, a 4K player, you know, a standard house home, you can get it on Blu-ray. Every household at this point in time carries a Blu-ray player. I'm really excited for people to watch this at home. The main menus are incredible. They're both completely different, Blu-ray and 4K. We wanted to create two completely different experiences for people, so it's not just the same movie in a different format. It is different in its own unique little ways for those that appreciate that. And it is so much sharper. We went back and restored the colors. We kind of boosted them up a little bit, sharpened it a little bit more. I mean, it looked great on the big screen, but doing a physical release is your last opportunity to really look at it and say, is there anything else? Is there anything else that can be slightly tweaked? And so we really just looked at it from that point of view. And yeah, we're really excited for people to watch it from home.
With the city of Remnant, do you think we'll see any more of Adrian Locke in the future, or is his story done? Is the city done with, or?
The story of Remnant is, I think, with any script that I tell, very, very ambitious and very big. And I always think of the next chapter. I always think what came before and what came after. And so with Remnant, I did develop those ideas, but ultimately, and you'll see this when you watch the movie, it has a conclusion, it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And we really wanted to respect that as its own individual story. And sure, it would be incredibly exciting to come back to the world of Remnant and revisit those characters and all of those motivations again, and kind of learn more about what happened. But for what we wanted to do, we wanted it to feel like a closing chapter. We wanted audiences to know when they watch the movie that it is over, that is it, and whatever comes next comes next. And so, yeah, I mean, at the moment, we are on post-production for our next feature film. We've already shot it. It is in the horror genre. Not very much I can talk about it at the moment, but we are literally finishing it as we speak. And so when people watch Remnant, I hope that they're very excited about it. And so when we release our next film, they'll know what they're in for, if not even more, because the next, trust me when I say our next film is far more ambitious, and it is far more exciting and far more dramatic, and we just continue to up the stakes, and we learn from our mistakes before and improve and get better and better as time goes on. People can go online right now and place their pre-order sale for the film, whether that be 4K, Blu-ray, whichever it is. And I'm just so incredibly grateful. I am honored to have, again, worked with so many incredibly talented people, and for everybody appreciating this project as much as I appreciated it. And it's been such a wild journey creating the film from inception to writing it, to editing it, to this moment that we're at right now, talking about it, looking back on it, retrospective, you know. And I can honestly tell you right now, there's not one moment I regret making this film. Everything that's there is straight from my heart. And I'm so proud of everyone for all the hard work that they poured themselves into for this. So please go watch Remnant Falls.
Spread the word on the streets and assemble your crew. I want a bounty on his head. Mark my words. Adrian Locke will not live to see the sun rise.